struggles. Virgil Donovan had always been a man of few words, preferring to let his actions speak for him. At 56, his weathered hands told the story of a man who had fought against the current his entire life. His medical technology startup, Neurosave, began in their garage 15 years ago, an ambitious venture born from his belief that affordable neural monitoring systems could revolutionize treatment for seizure disorders. His wife, Pamela, had laughed when he'd quit his stable hospital administrator position. "You're having a midlife crisis, Virgil," she'd said with that condescending smile. "Buy a sports car like normal men do." But Virgil wasn't normal, and he'd never aimed to be. The son of a steelworker from Pittsburgh, he'd put himself through medical school working night shifts at a factory. While his classmates came from privilege, Virgil's calloused hands had made him an outsider from day one. Their modest two-story home in Lansdowne, Pennsylvania, had seen better days. The same could be said for his marriage. 28 years together had devolved into parallel lives under the same roof. Their 3 children, Abigail, 27, Theodore, 25, and Claudia, 23, had all completed college with Virgil footing the bills, despite the company absorbing most of their savings during its difficult early years. On this particular evening, Virgil sat alone in his study, reviewing the final acquisition paperwork. MedCore Innovations had made a seemingly impossible offer for Neurosave after their latest neural implant prototype had shown remarkable results in clinical trials. $40 million. The number still didn't seem real. "Dad, Mom wants to know if you're eating with us tonight." Theodore stood at the door, his expression impatient. "I'll be down shortly," Virgil replied, shuffling the papers into a folder. Theodore lingered. "You've been weird lately. Everything okay with the company?" "Just finalizing some paperwork," Virgil answered, not ready to share the news. He wanted to surprise them, perhaps rekindle the respect he felt had faded over the years. After Theodore left, Virgil opened his laptop to check some final figures. A notification appeared. Pamela had accidentally signed into her iCloud account on his computer months ago, and he kept forgetting to fix it. Messages continued syncing, including one that appeared from a group chat named Dad's Failures. His stomach tightened as he clicked it open, expecting some momentary joke. Instead, he found 7 years of conversations, his wife, all 3 children, and messages from a man named Leo Martel, whom he recognized as Pamela's fitness instructor from the country club. "Dad actually thinks the neural monitor prototype is going to revolutionize medicine. Delusional as always," Abigail had written just last week. "Should we tell him nobody's going to invest in his garage science project?" Theodore added, "Let him keep dreaming. It keeps him busy while Mom and I enjoy our private sessions." Leo's message came with a winking emoji. "You're awful," Pamela had replied, adding a laughing emoji. "But he's been so obsessed with his failing business, he hasn't noticed anything for years." Virgil scrolled back through years of similar messages. Every setback, every moment of vulnerability he'd shared with his family, meticulously mocked and dissected. Photos of him working late in his home office captioned, "The Failing CEO" and "Delusional Dreams," episode 507. His hands trembled as he closed the laptop. The family he'd sacrificed everything for had been laughing at him for 7 years while he worked 18-hour days trying to build something meaningful. Dinner that night was a surreal experience. Virgil observed them as if seeing strangers, Pamela discussing her tennis lessons, Abigail talking about her marketing job, Theodore bragging about his finance internship, and Claudia showing off expensive shoes she couldn't afford on her entry-level teaching salary. He realized he'd been financing not just their education but their lifestyles, all while they ridiculed him behind his back. "You're quiet tonight, Dad," Claudia noted, not looking up from her phone. "Just thinking about the future," Virgil replied carefully. "About loyalty and consequences." "That sounds ominous," Pamela laughed. "Is the company having problems again?" The condescension in her tone was unmistakable now that he knew to listen for it. "You could say I've had a revelation," Virgil answered, meeting her eyes directly. "Sometimes we don't see what's right in front of us." Chapter 2. Confrontation. The next morning, Virgil waited until everyone had gathered for their monthly family breakfast, a tradition he had insisted on maintaining despite their obvious reluctance. "Before we start, I want to show you all something," Virgil said, opening his tablet. He turned it around, displaying screenshots of the Dad's Failures chat. The color drained from Pamela's face. Theodore dropped his fork with a clatter. Abigail froze mid-sip of her coffee, while Claudia's eyes widened in shock. 7 years, Virgil said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. 7 years of mockery. 7 years of betrayal. Dad, it's just jokes, Theodore started, attempting a casual laugh that died immediately under Virgil's stare. And you, Pamela, Virgil continued, with Leo, your fitness instructor? How long has that been going on? Virgil, you're overreacting, Pamela stammered. They're just silly messages. And Leo and I, it's nothing serious. Nothing serious? Virgil scrolled to explicit messages between them. Planning weekends together while I'm at medical conferences? Laughing about how I'm too preoccupied with my failing business to notice. Dad, we didn't mean, Abigail began. Yes, you did, Virgil cut her off. Every word, every laugh, every mockery of my dreams and hard work. You need to learn to take a joke, Claudia said defensively. Everyone has family group chats. Is that what this is? A joke? Virgil asked, his voice dropping dangerously low. My working 60-hour weeks to put all 3 of you through college? A joke? Remortgaging our house to keep the company afloat? A joke? The silence that followed was deafening. I'd like you all to leave, Virgil finally said. What do you mean, leave? Pamela demanded. This is my house too. Actually, it's not, Virgil replied coolly. The deed is in my name. I've already spoken with my attorney. You have until the end of the day to pack your essentials. You can't be serious, Theodore shouted. I've never been more serious in my life, Virgil responded. You all made your choices. 7 years of them. Where are we supposed to go? Abigail asked, her indignation barely masking her panic. Perhaps Leo has room, Virgil suggested to Pamela. Or perhaps one of your successful children can support you now. After all, my business is just a failure, isn't it? He stood up, straightening his jacket. I'll be at my office. When I return this evening, I expect you gone. As Virgil walked out, leaving them in stunned silence, he felt no satisfaction. Only a hollow confirmation of what he'd suspected upon seeing those messages. The family he thought he had existed only in his imagination. Chapter 3. Aftermath. 3 weeks passed in silence. Virgil changed the locks, blocked their numbers, and instructed his attorneys to handle any communication. He learned that Pamela had moved in with Leo, while the children had scattered to their respective apartments Virgil had been subsidizing without their knowledge. Those subsidies, along with the luxury car payments, credit card bills, and various memberships he'd been covering, had all been terminated. His attorney, Howard Greaves, reported multiple angry calls demanding explanations. They seem to be under the impression that this is a temporary tantrum, Howard explained during their meeting. They don't understand the severity of the situation. They will, Virgil replied, signing the final acquisition paperwork for Neurasafe. The news hadn't gone public yet, part of his strategy. About your will, Virgil, Howard continued. The changes you've requested are significant. Removing all family members entirely is unusual. The court might. I'm not dead yet, Howard, Virgil interrupted. And I've established the foundations and trusts exactly as we discussed. Everything is ironclad. That evening, alone in the house that had once echoed with family voices, Virgil reviewed his plan. The company announcement would come tomorrow, and with it, the beginning of what he now thought of as the reckoning. His phone began ringing incessantly the following afternoon, numbers he'd blocked somehow finding ways through. The sale of Neurasave to MedCore Innovations for $40 million was front-page news in the business section. His family, who had mocked his garage science project, had just discovered that the man they'd ridiculed had become a multi-millionaire overnight. Virgil let their calls go to voicemail, listening to them later with clinical detachment. Dad, I'm so proud of you. Abigail's voice, suddenly warm and enthusiastic. Pops, we need to talk. I always believed in you, from Theodore. Daddy, please call me back. I miss you, Claudia pleaded. And finally, Pamela. Virgil, we need to discuss this situation like adults. What happened between us doesn't erase 28 years of marriage. Call me back. No apologies. No acknowledgement of their behavior. Just the sudden recognition that the man they'd mocked might be valuable to them again. Virgil deleted the messages one by one, then called Howard. They've made contact, he said simply. As expected, Howard replied. How do you want to proceed? Exactly as planned, Virgil answered. It's time for Phase 2. Chapter 4. Calculated Moves. Virgil watched from his car as Pamela and Leo exited the country club, laughing together as they headed toward Leo's ostentatious red sports car. 3 months had passed since the confrontation, and his family's attempts at contact had grown increasingly desperate. The latest development was a letter from Pamela's attorney, threatening to contest their prenuptial agreement on grounds of duress and seeking half of his newfound wealth. The legal threat was empty. Virgil had ensured the prenup was ironclad, but it confirmed what he already knew. This was about money, not reconciliation. Through discreet investigation, Virgil had compiled a detailed dossier on Leo Martel. The self-proclaimed fitness guru had a pattern, targeting wealthy married women, beginning affairs, then leveraging them for financial gain. Pamela wasn't his first victim, nor his only current one. Leo maintained relationships with at least 2 other married women from the club, each believing they were his only transgression. As for his children, their lives had changed dramatically without Virgil's financial support. Abigail had been forced to take a roommate in her luxury apartment. Theodore, whose finance career wasn't as successful as he'd boasted, had been quietly borrowing money to maintain appearances. Claudia, the youngest and perhaps least culpable in Virgil's mind, had moved to a smaller apartment but seemed to be adjusting rather than scrambling like her siblings. Virgil's phone buzzed with a text from Dana Winters, his former executive assistant and the only person from Neurosave he'd brought with him into his new venture. Meeting confirmed with Westridge Health. 2 p.m. tomorrow. Dana had been with him through the darkest days of Neurosave, one of the few who had genuinely believed in his vision. Unlike his family, she had seen his failures as stepping stones rather than objects of ridicule. Her loyalty had been rewarded with a substantial bonus from the sale and a crucial position in his new company, Criterion Medical Systems. With the proceeds from Neurosave, Virgil had immediately founded Criterion, focusing on advanced medical training systems, a direct competitor to the simulation technology company where Leo had recently become a sales director, leveraging Pamela's contacts. Virgil started his car and drove to meet Raymond Torres, a former business rival who now controlled significant interests in medical equipment distribution across the Northeast. Virgil Donovan. Raymond greeted him at an upscale restaurant, his handshake firm. "The man who wouldn't sell to me 3 years ago." "The timing wasn't right," Virgil replied simply. "And now you want my help targeting MOCKED," Raymond said, cutting to the chase. "The same company that just hired your wife's boyfriend." "Ex-wife, soon enough," Virgil corrected. "And yes, I believe we can help each other." Raymond studied him carefully. "This feels personal, Virgil." "Business is always personal," Virgil countered. "MOCKED's technology is outdated. My systems are superior at half the price point. You'll make more money distributing mine. And it's merely coincidence that this would destroy Leo Martel's new career." Virgil didn't bother denying it. "Does my motivation matter if the deal benefits you?" Raymond laughed. "I like this version of you better, Donovan. The ruthless one." He raised his glass. "To mutually beneficial vengeance." That night, Virgil received the first direct contact from Pamela in months. Not a call or message, but her physical presence at his door. "You look well," she said when he answered, her eyes taking in his tailored suit and the subtle changes in his appearance. He'd lost weight, started working with a personal trainer himself, and carried himself with a new confidence. "What do you want, Pamela?" he asked, not inviting her in. "I think we should talk about what happens next," she said. "The divorce papers, the house, our future. Leo and I." "There is no our future," Virgil interrupted. "Only consequences for past actions." "Is that why you're trying to sabotage MOCKED?" she asked, her expression hardening. "Leo told me about your meeting with Raymond Torres. My business decisions are no longer your concern." "This isn't you, Virgil," she said, attempting a softer approach. "You were never vindictive before." "You never knew me," Virgil replied. "That's become abundantly clear. The man you mocked for 7 years was a caricature you created." "We can work through this," she insisted. "Family counseling, a fresh start." "The time for that passed the moment you created a group chat to ridicule me with our children," Virgil said. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." As he closed the door on her protests, Virgil felt no satisfaction, only grim determination. The board was set, the pieces in motion. Phase 2 was proceeding exactly as planned. Chapter 5. Tactical Pressures. MOCKED lost the Westridge contract, Dana reported, sliding a tablet across the conference table to Virgil. Raymond's distribution channels have already signed preliminary agreements with us for the northeastern region. 6 months into his plan, Virgil was seeing the first substantial results. Criterion Medical Systems had rapidly developed prototype training simulators that outperformed MOCKED's offerings in every metric and at more competitive pricing. Leo Martel was personally handling the Westridge account, Dana continued, a small smile playing at her lips. This was going to be his big commission. Apparently, he's been put on performance review. Virgil nodded, revealing nothing of his satisfaction. What about the European expansion? We're meeting with their representatives next week. If we secure their distribution network, MOCKED will be effectively locked out of the European market for at least 3 years. The systematic dismantling of MOCKED's market position was only one facet of Virgil's strategy. Through carefully cultivated relationships with key medical institutions, relationships he'd built during his Neurosave days, he was positioning Criterion as the future of medical training technology while painting MOCKED as obsolete. I received another call from Theodore yesterday, Dana mentioned cautiously. She was the only person who knew the full extent of his family situation. He sounded desperate. Theodore had recently been laid off from his finance position, a situation Virgil had engineered through connections at the firm, not through anything underhanded. He had simply made sure Theodore's mediocre performance received the proper scrutiny it deserved rather than being overlooked. Also, this arrived from Abigail, Dana added, handing him an envelope. Inside was a wedding invitation. Abigail was marrying a surgeon named Preston Walsh in 3 months. The handwritten note inside read, "Dad, I know we've had our differences, but I can't imagine my wedding day without you. Please call me. Love, Abigail." Virgil placed the invitation in his desk drawer without comment. His investigation into Preston Walsh had revealed a dedicated surgeon from a wealthy family, and no knowledge of the dad's failures, chat, or Abigail's role in it. Virgil wondered what version of their family drama Preston had been told. That evening, as Virgil worked late in his home office, the doorbell rang. He checked the security camera to find Claudia standing alone on his porch, clutching a portfolio and looking nervous. Unlike her siblings, Claudia had made no financial demands or attempted manipulation in the months following their confrontation. Her text messages, which he read but never answered, had evolved from defiant, "You're being unreasonable," to reflective, "I've been thinking about what we did," to apologetic, "I'm truly sorry for hurting you." After a moment's hesitation, Virgil opened the door. "Dad?" she said, visibly relieved he'd answered. "Thank you for seeing me." "What do you want, Claudia?" he asked, his tone neutral. "5 minutes of your time," she replied. "Please." He stepped aside to let her in, leading her to the living room rather than his office, keeping a symbolic distance from his private space. "I've left teaching," she began, opening her portfolio. "I've been working on something I wanted to show you." Inside were designs for adaptive educational tools for children with learning disabilities. "I remembered how you always talked about making medical technology more accessible," she continued. "It made me think about accessibility in education. These are just concepts, but why are you showing me this?" Virgil interrupted. Claudia took a deep breath. "Because I was wrong. We were all wrong. What we did to you was cruel and inexcusable. I've spent months trying to understand why I participated in something so hurtful to someone I love." "And your conclusion?" Virgil asked, unmoved. "That I was insecure and immature," she admitted. "That it was easier to join in mocking your dreams than to face my own fears of failure. That I'm deeply ashamed." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't expect forgiveness, Dad. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what you were trying to build, and that I'm trying to build something too, inspired by you." Virgil studied his youngest daughter, searching for signs of manipulation. Finding none, he still maintained his distance. "Your concepts have merit," he said finally. "But trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired." "I know," she nodded. "I'm not asking for money or support. I just missed you." As she left, Virgil felt the first crack in his armor. Of his 3 children, Claudia had been the least calculating in the aftermath, the only one showing genuine remorse rather than entitlement. But his plan was already in motion, wheels turning that couldn't easily be stopped. The following day brought news that Leo had been demoted at MOCKED following the loss of the Westridge contract. Pamela, according to Howard's sources, was growing increasingly frustrated with their financial situation as Leo's promised commissions failed to materialize. She's been trying to access joint accounts you closed, Howard informed him. And she's pressuring her attorney to find ways around the prenup. Let them waste their time, Virgil replied. Meanwhile, proceed with Phase 3. Chapter 6. Pressure Points. The annual Medical Innovation Conference in Chicago marked 1 year since Virgil had discovered the Dad's Failures chat. Now, as he prepared to deliver the keynote address showcasing Criterion's breakthrough training systems, he reflected on how methodically his plan had unfolded. MOCKED was on the verge of bankruptcy, having lost most major contracts to Criterion. Leo had been fired 3 months earlier, his reputation in the industry destroyed. Pamela had filed for divorce, demanding substantial alimony despite the prenuptial agreement, a desperate move from a woman watching her comfortable life disintegrate. Theodore had cycled through 3 jobs, each ending when his lackluster performance couldn't be hidden behind his father's former connections. Abigail had married Preston Walsh, but Virgil's absence at the wedding had raised questions he knew she struggled to answer truthfully. Only Claudia had maintained sporadic contact, sending updates about her educational technology project without asking for anything in return. Her last message had simply read, "I understand if you never forgive us, but I want you to know I'm proud of what you've built, Dad. Both the company and the strength it took to stand up for yourself." As Virgil adjusted his tie before the keynote, Dana entered his hotel suite with an urgent expression. "They're here," she said. "All of them." "Who?" Virgil asked, though he already suspected. "Pamela, Leo, Theodore, Abigail, and her husband. They've all registered for the conference." Dana handed him a tablet showing their names on the attendance list. "Claudia isn't with them." Virgil nodded, unsurprised. "They're hoping to confront me in a public setting where I can't easily walk away. Should we have security remove them?" "No," Virgil decided after a moment. "Let them watch." His keynote speech revealed Criterion's next-generation neural interface training system, technology that made MOCKED's offerings obsolete overnight. The medical community's response was overwhelmingly positive, with pre-orders flooding in before he'd even left the stage. As Virgil mingled with potential partners at the reception afterward, he spotted Pamela and Leo watching from across the room. Theodore stood nearby, looking uncomfortable in an ill-fitting suit, while Abigail whispered intently to her confused-looking husband. Virgil deliberately turned his back on them, focusing on his conversation with the chief of neurosurgery from Johns Hopkins. Moments later, he felt a hand on his arm. "Virgil, we need to talk," Pamela said, her voice tight but controlled. "All of us, as a family." The neurosurgeon discreetly stepped away as Virgil turned to face his ex-wife. "We have nothing to discuss," he replied calmly. "Dad, please," Abigail interjected, joining them with Preston in tow. "This has gone far enough. You've made your point." "What exactly do you think my point is?" Virgil asked. "That you're successful and we were wrong," Theodore answered, stepping forward. "We get it. You won." "This isn't about winning," Virgil replied, his voice low but intense. "This is about consequences. Actions have them." "You've destroyed Leo's career," Pamela hissed. "You've cut us all off financially. Isn't that enough? You created a chat group called Dad's Failures and mocked me for 7 years, Virgil stated flatly. "You laughed at my dreams, belittled my struggles, and cheated on our marriage. And now that the business you ridiculed has made me wealthy, you want to reconcile?" Preston Walsh's expression shifted from confusion to shock. "Abigail, is this true?" Abigail faltered, looking trapped. "It wasn't like that. It was just jokes." "Show him," Virgil suggested, nodding toward Preston. "Show your husband the chat. Let him judge whether they were just jokes." "This is ridiculous," Leo interrupted, stepping forward aggressively. "You've systematically targeted me, destroyed my reputation in the industry." "I built a better product," Virgil corrected him. "The market decided." "Isn't that how competition works, Leo?" Security had noticed the confrontation and started moving in their direction. Dana appeared at Virgil's side. "Everything okay here, Virgil?" she asked, her expression making it clear she was prepared to have them removed. "We were just finishing," Virgil replied. To his family, he added, "I have nothing more to say to any of you." The time for conversation was a year ago, when I gave you the opportunity to explain yourselves. You chose mockery then. Live with the consequences now. As he walked away, he heard Preston demanding to see the chat messages, Abigail stammering excuses, and Pamela calling after him in frustrated anger. But another voice caught his attention, quieter, coming from a small table in the corner of the reception hall. Dad, Claudia sat alone, not with the others, a portfolio similar to the one she'd shown him months ago open on the table. She hadn't approached with the group, hadn't participated in their confrontation. Virgil hesitated, then changed direction, walking toward his youngest daughter. You're not with them, he observed, stopping at her table. No, she replied simply. I didn't come to demand anything or create a scene. I came to see your keynote. She gestured to her notes. Your neural interface has applications for educational accessibility that I hadn't even considered. I've been sketching some ideas. Virgil studied her for a moment, then made a decision. I have another meeting now, he said. But I have time for breakfast tomorrow. 8 a.m. in the hotel restaurant. Claudia's eyes widened slightly. I'll be there. As Virgil left the reception, he felt a complex mix of emotions. The confrontation with Pamela, Leo, Theodore, and Abigail had confirmed they still didn't truly understand what they'd done. They saw his actions as revenge rather than natural consequences of broken trust. But Claudia had shown something different. Respect for his boundaries and genuine remorse without expectation. Phase 3 was nearly complete. The final moves would take place in the coming weeks. But for the first time in a year, Virgil considered that perhaps his plan needed adjustment. Not for those who refused to acknowledge their betrayal, but for the one person who seemed to have genuinely learned from it. Chapter 7. Turning Points. Breakfast with Claudia marked a subtle shift in Virgil's perspective. For 2 hours, they discussed her educational technology concepts, deliberately avoiding family drama. Her ideas were genuinely innovative, adaptive learning systems for children with processing disorders, inspired by his neural monitoring technology. You're not asking for investment, Virgil noted as they finished their meal. No, Claudia confirmed. I wanted your feedback, not your money. I'm applying for grants next month. Virgil considered her carefully. Why did you participate in the chat, Claudia? You were the least active, but you were there. She didn't flinch from the direct question. Because I wanted to belong, she admitted. Mom, Abigail, and Theodore had this alliance. I felt excluded until they added me to that group. It's not an excuse, it's just the truth. She met his eyes. I should have had the courage to stand up for you instead of seeking their approval. Her honesty resonated with Virgil. Before they parted, he gave her his direct number, the first family member to receive it since the confrontation. 2 weeks after the conference, Seemamed filed for bankruptcy. Leo, unemployed and increasingly desperate, had begun selling off assets to maintain the lifestyle he'd promised Pamela. Their relationship was visibly strained, according to Howard's discreet sources. Pamela's divorce demands had been thoroughly rejected by the court, the prenuptial agreement holding firm. With her lifestyle rapidly downsizing and Leo's promises evaporating, she had begun reaching out to old friends, only to find many doors closed. Virgil's quiet recounting of her betrayal had spread through their social circle. Theodore had moved to a small apartment in a less desirable neighborhood, his financial struggles increasingly apparent. Abigail's marriage was showing stress fractures. Preston had indeed seen the chat messages and was struggling to reconcile them with the woman he'd married. Virgil took no pleasure in their difficulties. The hollow feeling that had started the day he discovered the chat remained, a void where family trust had once existed. His success with Criterion had brought professional satisfaction, but hadn't filled that personal emptiness. On a rainy Tuesday, Virgil received an unexpected visitor at Criterion's headquarters, Preston Walsh, Abigail's husband, looking troubled. Mr. Donovan, Preston began after being shown into Virgil's office. I apologize for coming unannounced. What can I do for you, Dr. Walsh? Virgil asked formally. I've seen the chat messages, Preston said directly. All of them. Abigail finally showed me everything after the conference. He shook his head. I can't imagine discovering something like that after years of supporting your family. Yet you're still with my daughter, Virgil observed. I believe people can change, Preston replied. But they have to acknowledge their mistakes first. He hesitated. Abigail is pregnant. You're going to be a grandfather in about 7 months. The news hit Virgil unexpectedly. A grandchild, a new generation untainted by the betrayal. I'm not asking you to forgive her, Preston continued, but I thought you should know. And he placed a business card on Virgil's desk. This is the therapist Abigail has been seeing. She's been working through why she behaved the way she did. It's not an excuse, but perhaps an explanation, if you ever want to hear it. After Preston left, Virgil sat alone with this new information. A grandchild changed the equation in ways he hadn't anticipated. His plan had focused on consequences for those who had betrayed him, but now an innocent life would enter the picture. That evening, as Virgil reviewed acquisition documents for a smaller competitor, his secure phone, the one whose number only Dana and now Claudia had, buzzed with a message. Claudia, something's happened with Mom. She's in the hospital. Attempted suicide. She's stable but sedated. I thought you should know. Virgil sat motionless, the document forgotten. This wasn't part of his plan. He had wanted justice, consequences, not this. Despite everything, he had spent nearly 3 decades with Pamela. The hollow feeling in his chest expanded. After a long moment, he replied, "Which hospital?" For hours later, Virgil stood in the hallway outside Pamela's hospital room. Theodore had spotted him first, rising angrily from his chair. "You don't belong here," he snarled. "Haven't you done enough?" "Theodore," Claudia warned, stepping between them. "Stop." "Why?" Theodore demanded. His consequences drove her to this. "Mom made her own choices," Claudia replied firmly. "All of us did. We can't blame Dad for that." Typical Claudia, always trying to get back in his good graces, Abigail muttered from her seat, though her eyes were red from crying. "Where's Leo?" Virgil asked quietly. A tense silence fell over the group. "He left her last week," Claudia finally answered, "when she ran out of money and the last of her jewelry was sold." Virgil nodded, unsurprised. "How is she?" "The doctors say she'll recover physically," Claudia explained. "They're recommending psychiatric evaluation afterward." "I'd like a moment alone with her," Virgil said. Before Theodore could object, he added, "She's sedated. I won't disturb her recovery." Reluctantly, the 3 siblings stepped away, Theodore glaring and Abigail avoiding eye contact, while Claudia gently squeezed his arm as she passed. Inside the dim room, Pamela looked smaller than he remembered, fragile under the hospital blankets. Virgil sat beside her bed, studying the face he had once loved. "I never wanted this," he said softly to her unconscious form. "Consequences, yes. Accountability, yes. But not this." He remained for several minutes in silence, then rose to leave. As he reached the door, Pamela's voice, weak but clear, stopped him. "Virgil." He turned to find her eyes open, watching him. "You came," she said. "Yes." "To gloat?" she asked, a hint of the old bitterness in her tone. "No," he replied honestly. "To make sure you'll be okay." "Why would you care?" Her voice caught. "You've taken everything from me. You chose Leo," Virgil reminded her gently. "You chose mockery over respect. I simply stopped supporting those choices." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I didn't think you'd ever find out." "That's worse, not better," Virgil said. "Get help, Pamela. Not for me, not for the kids, but for yourself." As he left the room, he found his children waiting in the hallway. Theodore looked away, arms crossed defensively. Abigail met his eyes briefly before looking down at her hands, one resting protectively over her still flat stomach. Claudia stepped forward. "Thank you for coming." Virgil nodded. "She needs professional help. I'll cover the costs of a good treatment facility." "Why would you do that?" Theodore demanded. "After everything you've done to destroy her life?" "Because ending my financial support was about consequences, not cruelty," Virgil replied. "This is different." As he walked away, Virgil knew he needed to recalibrate his plan. Pamela's suicide attempt had clarified something. His goal had never been destruction, but justice. And justice without mercy, he was beginning to realize, could become something else entirely. Chapter 8. Recalibration. The psychiatric treatment facility overlooking the Chesapeake Bay was among the best in the country. Virgil had arranged for Pamela's admission and spoke with her doctors regularly, though he didn't visit. The formal divorce proceedings continued, but he'd instructed Howard to ensure she would have enough to live modestly afterward, not out of obligation, but humanity. 2 months after Pamela's hospitalization, Virgil invited Claudia to dinner at his home. She arrived with her portfolio and a tentative smile. "I got the grant," she announced as they sat in his study. Not the full amount I applied for, but enough to build a prototype. Congratulations, Virgil said, genuinely pleased for her. That's significant validation of your concept. Over dinner, they discussed her project's technical challenges. The conversation flowed naturally, almost like before, but with a new foundation of honesty between them. Dad, Claudia said as they finished the meal, Abigail's baby shower is next weekend. She didn't want me to tell you. She hesitated. I think she's afraid you'd refuse if she invited you directly. Virgil considered this. Is Preston well? Yes, Claudia nodded. He's been supportive through everything. He comes from a good family. And Theodore? Still struggling, she admitted. He blames you for everything instead of accepting his part in it. He's working retail now, a big step down from finance. Virgil nodded, unsurprised. And how are you, really? Claudia looked startled by the direct question. I'm finding my way. Some days are easier than others. I miss how things used to be, but I understand why they can't go back to that. She met his eyes. I'm sorry, Dad. Truly. Not because I want your money or connections, but because what we did was wrong. Period. Her sincerity moved him. I believe you, he said simply. The following week, a package arrived at Abigail and Preston's home. An expensive crib with all safety features, accompanied by a note, for my grandchild. Virgil Donovan. No attendance at the shower, but an acknowledgement of the child, a calculated step in Virgil's recalibrated approach. Criterion continued thriving, expanding into international markets and developing new applications for Virgil's neural interface technology. He worked long hours, finding purpose in the company's growth and impact on medical training. 3 months later, Virgil received a call from Howard. Leo Martel contacted my office, Howard reported. He's offering information in exchange for, quote, calling off your vendetta against him. What information? Virgil asked. He claims Pamela wasn't the instigator of the chat group. Says he has proof it was Theodore who created it, and added the others. Virgil was silent for a moment. Arrange a meeting. Leo looked considerably less polished when Virgil met him at Howard's office. His designer clothes replaced by off-the-rack business casual, his confidence diminished. I appreciate you seeing me, Leo began. The information, Leo, Virgil replied, not interested in pleasantries. Leo produced a tablet. Theodore created the group during his sophomore year of college. He was failing several classes after telling everyone he was getting top marks. He started the chat to mock you before you could discover his academic probation. He showed Virgil screenshots predating the ones he discovered, conversations between Theodore and Pamela initially, then adding Abigail, and finally Claudia years later. Pamela was a participant, certainly, Leo continued, but Theodore was always the ringleader. He encouraged everyone to contribute. Why are you showing me this now? Virgil asked. Because I want a chance to rebuild my life, Leo admitted frankly. Your systematic dismantling of CMOMED was brilliant, but ruthless. No medical technology company will hire me now. You participated in mocking me while sleeping with my wife, Virgil pointed out. Actions have consequences. I never claimed to be a good man, Leo acknowledged with surprising candor. But I wasn't the architect of your family's betrayal. Theodore was. After Leo left, Virgil sat alone in Howard's conference room, processing this new information. Theodore, his only son, the child he'd perhaps placed the most hope in, had created the group specifically to undermine him before his own failures could be discovered. It shifted his understanding of the dynamics, though not his fundamental sense of betrayal. But it did explain Theodore's continued hostility. He had the most to lose if the full truth emerged. Virgil made 2 calls that evening. The first to Claudia, inviting her to bring her prototype to Criterion's labs for testing. The second to Preston, accepting an invitation to dinner with him and Abigail the following week. The dinner was predictably tense. Abigail, now visibly pregnant, vacillated between defensive hostility and desperate attempts at normalcy. Preston skillfully mediated, his medical training perhaps helping him navigate the emotional minefield. I'm seeing a therapist, Abigail eventually admitted after an hour of strained conversation. She's helping me understand why I participated in hurting you. She placed her hand over her rounded stomach. I don't want to pass these patterns on. That's commendable, Virgil replied neutrally. Will you ever forgive us? She asked directly. Forgiveness isn't a single moment, Virgil answered after consideration. It's a process. I'm here tonight. That's a starting point. As Virgil left, Preston walked him to his car. "She's genuinely trying," he said. "The baby has given her perspective." "And Theodore?" Virgil asked. "Has he shown any similar insight?" Preston's expression darkened. "No. He still blames you entirely. He's been pressuring Abigail to cut contact with you again, says she's betraying him by reconnecting with you." This aligned with what Leo had revealed. Theodore had the most to lose if his instigating role became known. The final piece of Virgil's recalibrated plan formed in his mind. True justice required the complete truth, not just about the chat's existence, but its origins and purpose. Only then could genuine healing begin, for those willing to embrace it. Chapter 9, Revelations. 6 months later, Virgil stood in the hospital corridor, looking through the nursery window at his newborn grandson, Robert Virgil Walsh. The baby had arrived 3 weeks early but healthy, with Abigail's eyes and Preston's chin. Claudia stood beside him, her educational technology prototype having secured full funding after successful testing in Criterion's labs. Her path to redemption had been the straightest, genuine remorse followed by consistent actions demonstrating her changed perspective. Abigail's journey had been more complicated. Her therapy had revealed deep-seated insecurities and a desperate need for approval that had made her vulnerable to Theodore's influence. Her relationships with both her father and husband were works in progress, but the baby had given her powerful motivation to break toxic patterns. Pamela had completed her treatment program and moved to a small condo Virgil had purchased for her as part of their divorce settlement, not out of obligation but compassion. They maintained minimal contact, the wounds still too deep for anything more, but the bitter hostility had faded into something closer to sad acceptance. Only Theodore remained unchanged, his resentment calcifying into hatred as everyone else began healing without him. His refusal to accept responsibility had isolated him further as the truth about the chat's origins had gradually emerged through Abigail and Pamela's therapy sessions. "He's beautiful," Claudia said, watching the baby sleep. "You're so lucky, Dad." "I know," Virgil replied quietly. Preston appeared in the hallway, looking exhausted but happy. "Abigail's asking for you," he told Virgil. In the hospital room, Abigail looked up as Virgil entered. "Dad," she said softly. "Thank you for coming." "He's perfect," Virgil said, referring to the baby. "I named him after you," she replied. "His middle name. I hope that's okay." The gesture moved him unexpectedly. "It's more than okay." They talked quietly for a while, the conversation easier than it had been in months. As Virgil prepared to leave, allowing her to rest, Abigail caught his hand. "Theodore is planning something," she said, her expression troubled. "He came to see me yesterday, angry that I'd given the baby your name. He said you'll get what you deserve soon. I think you should be careful." Virgil nodded, unsurprised. "Thank you for telling me." 3 days later, Howard called with news. "Theodore has filed a lawsuit against you," he reported. "He's alleging emotional abuse, financial manipulation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. He's seeking damages of $20 million. The lawsuit was desperate and baseless, but revealing of Theodore's state of mind. He was lashing out, a final attempt to hurt the father he refused to acknowledge he had wronged first. "He's also talking to journalists," Howard continued, "shopping around a story about how you vindicatively destroyed your family after achieving success." Virgil had anticipated something like this. "Implement Contingency Protocol 5, he instructed Howard. "It's time for full disclosure." The following week, as Theodore sat with a journalist from a prominent business magazine, prepared to tell his version of events, he was handed a thick folder by a courier. "What's this?" he demanded. "Mr. Donovan thought you might want all the facts before your interview." The courier replied before departing. Inside the folder were complete records of the Dad's Failures chat from its inception, showing Theodore as the creator and primary instigator. Also included were Theodore's college transcripts showing his academic probation, records of the financial support Virgil had provided while being mocked, and sworn statements from Pamela, Abigail, and Leo confirming Theodore's leading role in the years of ridicule. Theodore's lawsuit was withdrawn the next day. The journalist, presented with the full context, declined to pursue the story. 1 month later, Virgil hosted a small gathering at his home, Preston and Abigail with baby Robert, Claudia with her new business partner, and Dana with her husband. Theodore was notably absent, having cut contact with the entire family after his failed lawsuit. As Virgil held his grandson, watching Claudia demonstrate her prototype and Abigail laughing with Preston, he reflected on the journey of the past 2 years. The family he had once known was gone, shattered beyond repair by the revelation of 7 years of mockery. But from those broken pieces, something new was slowly forming, not based on obligation or appearance, but on truth, accountability, and genuine connection. The business he had built from nothing had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. The family members who had mocked him had faced the consequences of their actions. Those willing to acknowledge their wrongs and change had found paths back into his life, while those who clung to denial remained estranged. It wasn't the ending he would have chosen when he'd started his business in their garage 15 years ago. But as he looked at his grandson's face, the future now, Virgil felt the hollow space inside him beginning to fill with something new. Not the blind trust he'd once given so freely, but a cautious hope for relationships built on stronger foundations. The price of mockery had been high for everyone involved. But for those willing to learn from it, there was still a future to be built, different, perhaps, but possibly stronger for having been broken and carefully reassembled. As he handed Robert back to Abigail, Virgil made peace with the knowledge that some bridges would remain burned, Theodore's particularly. But he had stopped expecting apologies from those unwilling to offer them, and had learned to recognize genuine remorse when it appeared. For a man once mocked as a failure, Virgil Donovan had succeeded in the ways that truly mattered, building something lasting, standing firm in his principles, and offering second chances to those who earned them, while understanding that forgiveness and reconciliation required truth as their foundation. The mockery had ended, justice had been served, and life, in its imperfect way, continued forward. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.